Evening. We will call this evening's work session to order, and I think we'll go ahead and let Rebecca kick us off on this.
All right, thank you guys. So this is our third work session that has to do with the commission policies. The first two have had a special segment for economic development policies as you reviewed your old policies and looked at a consolidated new policy. The document you have before you is a compilation with trying to put them in order. So I'm going to lead off with the formatting is not where we want it yet. In an older Word document with a couple people helping us make up markups, it is a little messy to read. So we do apologize for that, but we didn't want to delete any information that we might find valuable in our conversations this evening. I can go in by policy, but I wasn't sure if anyone had any questions or ideas or comments that they wanted to start with, or anything that came to mind initially?
Well, as I was going through them, I just wrote down like 1.4, the commission agenda.
Yes.
So by eliminating that, what does that mean for this?
Sure. So some of the policies that you'll see that have been eliminated, that's because they're in another document. So a lot of the procedural ones, and I might just start with the table of contents then and maybe get a little bit of overview. So what's going to be proposed, if this was all cleaned up, it would talk about the policy code development process that had very minor edits to that first policy. Then what will be eventually moved and is still stuck in its original place because Microsoft Word and I did not agree, is the annual review of these policies. So then that is, again, a policy that you've already had in place, but that maybe hasn't been acted on as regularly, that these policies come to you on an annual basis for your review. Obviously not in this depth, but just to make sure that everything is where you're hoping it would be. Then there are some removal of things such as new business items, city commission agendas, notice of hearing, agendas for building, plumbing, electrical, mechanical boards. These are items that are either in the city commission procedures guides, the policy manuals, or in other things such as zoning regulations, HR policies, other types of things. So they're not that these are being removed in their entirety, but that they already exist someplace else in a better and more updated format. The awarding the keys to the city is removed because that's something we haven't done in such a long time. The industrial revenue bond, the tax exemption, and waiving the permit fees, they are marked as removed in their current form. However, they were rolled into those economic development policies in that more comprehensive piece. The financing public improvements was then moved to follow right behind economic development. That was a policy, but it was formatted just in this process to fit our policy format instead of just being in the resolution. And then annexation is in its current state. The appropriation request procedures, some of them have stayed fairly static. The evaluation for the city manager, again, we just included the city attorney since that is our current procedure. And I think the code of ethics is the last one in our manual. So that kind of hopefully answers your question, Commissioner Valentine.
I had the same question because I went and pulled the governing body manual and I couldn't find those things really called out in it. So,
okay.
There's a governing body manual and there's a procedure manual, but when it comes to the agenda, that is more, I would say, staff-driven than commission-driven. So that might be part of the reason that there's not a policy for that, because I think that was one of the things that was in one of our manuals.
Well, I just think we need to crosswalk it to be able to find it because later on there were other references that I couldn't find. I mean, and I like to think that I'm somewhat intelligent and know how to use a website, but specifically the fees that were being called out and referred to in the policy manual weren't easily readily available out on our website.
And I think I mentioned at our last work session, that is in reference to a project we were currently working on to have some sort of a fee resolution. If that does not come to pass, then we would have to cite that in another reference, that it would either be available per project or in another way. So that was a placeholder in that. I think I know which one you're speaking of.
But anybody wanting to move here, do business here, develop here, or whatever, is going to go to our website. So
Correct.
we need to do that.
Yeah, we are in the final stages of that. We had got those all into one big document. It's going to be in maybe a resolution form, maybe a different form, I don't know. And we have sent that out to staff now to review. So that should be coming to you and then in a couple meetings.
Right.
So hang tight.
So is this an okay time to ask another question? Or
Sure.
are you kind of wanting to follow
Nope.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you for the reminder. I appreciate that. Is this an okay time to ask some other questions? Or are you wanting to follow?
No,
kind of
this time is for you all to
Okay.
help guide us.
So another one that I saw that was marked out was the notice of hearing. And so my first thought went to, well, what do you do then when we have to post hearings like for budgets and that kind of stuff? No?
We don't think that that has to be in there. That is one, because it was about noticing everything that has a public hearing is noticed up somewhere else. Like planning commission stuff is noticed up. We automatically do public hearings for, like if we're going to have the budget, there's reasons already, statutes or whatever, that have hearing places noted up.
I think that was the thought process, is that you're going to follow the statute, so you
Yeah.
don't necessarily need this policy that's going to be repetitive of that, I think is the idea.
Okay.
Understand that some of these policies were in place back in 1979 when some of the stuff, was a lot more complicated and there wasn't all the information available online.
All right, thank you.
There wasn't even an online.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Any other questions that come to mind?
So, and I think we kind of got hung up on this one the last time, and I don't recall what we resolved, but it's on the policy for selecting the mayor. And I am still, and I need to get to it because it's in here somewhere. I know I had it up here, and I don't have it right in front of me, but it said like a new person couldn't be mayor the first year. Well, and I think we tossed this back and forth the last time, but when a new person is elected, if he or she gets the most votes in that election, he or she isn't going to be the mayor anyway until it's a year's lapse. So if that holds true, then why do we need that language in there that they can't be the mayor the first year that they're elected? Because that,
Sure, it seems, it at first glance seems like it's a little repetitive, doesn't it?
thank you.
What we were discussing a little bit last time, and I know we've certainly, at least Denise and I have had some conversations about this. This is more probably from the commission, again, and this is 1981, who felt that somebody who was newly elected probably should serve some time before they took the role of mayor. This would be an exception if maybe somebody was to move or somebody was to, heaven forbid, pass away, or somebody was to have something else, where you would have enough changes to the commission that this could come to be passed. This would be an exception and not a rule. It's kind of just a extra safeguard if the commission would still want that, where you would not, you would be very explicit that you would want somebody to have some length of service before they served in that role as mayor. Now, if that's not what the commission wishes, I mean, obviously this is a work session, we're here to have that conversation. But I think hopefully that gives a little reasoning behind why the language is there, even though it kind of sounds a little bit like a duplication.
on the purpose, it says it's in the intent of the policy to make sure that those who lead in the city of Newton have had previous experience in local government. Well, I know I didn't, not until I was elected. So when,
I think that's assuming that you've been elected, you're serving in that first-year position, and that you wouldn't be serving as that time. We can clean up that number 2 on that one if you want. That's not a problem.
well, it just causes me to ask questions, and I'm not trying to, I mean, maybe everybody else understands it, so.
And remember, this policy is one that can be deviated from very easily because it has been in the past.
Okay.
It's just a policy of a suggestion, I would say, more so of how we have done things in the past, but there have been a number of years that it has been deviated from.
It'd be like us approving a variance
Correct.
subject to,
Correct.
Okay, okay.
Does that help you feel more
I'm
comfortable?
not trying to make a big issue
No,
out of it, really.
it's all
I'm
good.
Just asking questions based on language. And so if it stirs a question mark up here, I feel like I need to ask. So thank you, though, for the clarification.
I know we talked through it and I forgot why, but why did we remove the definition of FTE jobs?
That was something that we had a discussion with, and I think Beth's here tonight with us, about making sure that maybe sometimes people might be a full-time equivalency, maybe at 32 hours or 30 hours, and there was the desire to be most inclusive with our employers and try to encourage that development and let the state, who would handle a lot of that, make that definition work. So it was just to whatever fits the requirement of full-time without
So
us
do we need to-
mandating that.
Do we need to call out and say that as defined by the Kansas Department of Labor or whatever, so that we remove some of that ambiguity? Because I think that's what these policies are for, are to remove the ambiguity. So if everybody likes to know the rule or why they're, how they're going to be measured. And I think if we called that out, whether we called it out by saying what definition we're going to use or saying what definition we're going to incorporate.
Do you have any recommend?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
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 This is what they're talking about under new job creation.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so some companies will have 30 hours as full-time and they receive full-time benefits. Some companies is 40 hours a week. So the Department of Labor, they have the standard when they were applying for any type of incentive. They just have full-time FT, but they don't right now have a definition with Commerce for those incentives. Labor has some, but Commerce doesn't, and that's where the incentives come from. So I think us putting a stipulation on it just makes it more restrictive than it needs to be, because each company has their own set of what a full-time employee looks like. So like right now, if you look at AGCO and their full-time employees might be doing job share where they're not working, so would they then be knocked out of that because they're not working those hours? Does that make any sense?
Well, benefits is only part of the full-time equation. I mean, just because somebody has benefits at 30 hours or 32 hours doesn't mean that they don't need a 40-hour job to survive, So, I mean, that's only part of the equation. That's why I think there's a tried and true FTE rule of 20/80. And if we're going to deviate from that, I think we need to define what that is.
Yeah, I mean,
What at least establish the basement of what we're going to consider an FTE is.
okay. I mean, the state, we pulled up several of the ones that were listed, and there wasn't clear across the board, but we can implement whatever, if we want. It's however you want us to move forward. Each one of our companies, if we go back and look at the ones that have received incentives in the past, they're not all 40-hour work weeks.
and the range is what, 32 to 40?
Yeah, it's 32 to 40.
Yeah.
None of them fall before 32 unless they're doing some sort of job share, which none of those employees are in the program right now, but there are some special incentive programs for those type of employees that then get offsetted by workforce dollars because then they can do some cross-training and things. So 32 would be the minimum, so you could, if you're comfortable with that, put that number in there
Right.
as a full-time.
1664 to 2080. If you did 32 to 40, I mean, if you put it in there like that, can you do that? What do you think? You, Rich, I'm sorry. We're not just you.
Yeah, no, I think if you put the range for 32 hours to 40 hours per week, I mean, even DOL has a rolling calendar on that rule. It's not, everybody has to work 32. It's 5 or 7 week average, I think it is, something like that. I'm not expert on that, but.
Yeah, so the state, the main 3 programs, they all have different, but none of them fall below 32, so I think that I'd feel really comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think 32.
Yeah, that would make sense to me.
We can certainly modify that then to just go back and where it marked off, we can go ahead and say at least 1664. And just modify that number, if that's amenable.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any,
Rebecca,
yes.
at the beginning, when we mentioned the new business items in the city commission agendas, you had mentioned that those were in another document, which was the governing body handbook or manual. Which one did you refer to?
I'm gonna,
Was it the handbook, Denise?
I think Denise is gonna have to remind me. So, and they're not delineated like a policy.
No, they're just
It's
plain.
just a little, it's a 1 or 2 sentence line that talks
Yeah.
about the items should go to the city clerk prior to the meeting, without the formality of a strict procedure, because that more accurately fit our actual procedure.
Right. I wanted to point out that on our website, we have a governing body manual, which was adopted in 2023. And in the manual, it starts out by talking about how an agenda is created, how an item is, how a commission meeting, it's on there.
Yes. All right. Thank you for helping me.
I can send a link out.
Thank you.
And maybe we need to put it in a place where it's more
Is it this one?
yes. I just Googled governing body.
I did too.
Okay.
So what page? 16?
16, the agenda. So you have schedule, the
Yep.
agenda,
Okay.
then you have the meeting.
Because I tried to crosswalk these things that are talking about
Okay.
things.
It's a really great document, whoever put that together.
Help me with the definition under, like, spec buildings. It says the property tax abatement, percentages and everything, is leased to an eligible tenant. What definition are we using for eligible tenant?
Sorry, I haven't.
And we'll have page numbers on the finished doc, right?
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Let me look at where you're at. Oh, eligible tenant, yes, I see. I think that was just a comment under that we needed the definition, but if there was something that would make you where you were ineligible for that, we could, it's kind of a clarifying thing. It obviously is not clarifying then if it's leading us to some, open, I thought it just gave us a little bit of allowances that you might have to look at each project individually. As we were working through this, some of the direction seemed to be that the commission wanted to take each project based on its own merits, and I think that was kind of trying to allow for that.
As far as the property tax abatements and their eligibility, they have to fall in a certain NAICS code, and their NAICS code has to start with a certain number. There's only certain ones that apply for manufacturing. There's about 4 beginning NAICS codes. So if you wanted to, you could tie it into that. That would just then mean that it's manufacturing that create primary jobs. And that's what when you send it off to the Board of Tax Appeals, it has to have that NAICS code, or you can't legally give them a tax abatement, so, an EDX. You can through IRBs, but not through an EDX. So.
Have we ever done, in Newton, have we ever seen spec buildings that weren't manufacturing done? Is that common?
I don't know. I think,
Hadn't happened
well,
much.
I don't recall any.
yeah.
I couldn't.
I was just saying North Newton, they built the building that Al built over across from
Yeah, the
Local.
yeah.
office
And
units.
those are kind of spec, but it's not manufacturing, but it's in North Newton. But that'd be my only example, I guess.
Now, if we add that, that would of course that wouldn't go to our office building types of spec buildings that we have, and we're still using the language of an eligible tenant in that
Right.
case. I think that was just, again, just to allow for that, if you get the project in front of you, you could go through it and see, does this meet? Because we don't have all the particulars in front of us. There might be something in a project where it doesn't work out for some reason. But again, we can't quite know all of the factors and variables
Or it might not be
yet.
a business that we allow in the industrial park right now, or there are certain types that aren't.
Or the state could change the rules on
Right,
what
yeah.
applies.
Yeah.
Are you still there, Rich? On the spec thing?
No, you can go. I
So
don't
in-
agree, but I
Well,
know what we're trying to do is we're trying to give ourselves wiggle room, but we're trying to actually not, so.
So I was looking, and I think we talked about this too when we did it the last time. So the EDC part where you have the, like the tax abatement, like for new job creation, capital investment, and, I'm getting all these pages messed up. So I went through and I tried to think, okay, so what if, because I know one reason why we wanted to do this was we wanted to get away from 100% 10-year as much as possible. So when I was going through here, I thought, well, okay, so what if you have somebody that is going to bring like 5 or 6 jobs, 30%? What if he is going to put in $1 million, 15%? So then you have 45% there. And then depending on the location, because it had a percentage for the locations. 30%. So I'm like, okay, you're almost up to 100%, almost. And so immediately you're thinking of the public, and here goes another 100% tax abatement. It's just done a little bit differently. So I guess my question is, how did we arrive at the percentages that have been suggested? Are they tweakable?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything's tweakable. We did comps with surrounding areas and what those communities had for their tax abatements, and then tried to be not the most competitive, but we don't want to not offer anything either. So we tried to be kind of middle of the road on those.
And I think in that project like you proposed, if I was adding it correctly, we got to 75% tax abatement.
Yeah.
If they had the location, the lower number of jobs, and the lower number of investment. And so even if they took the state incentive with another 10%, that only gets them at an 85%.
that
So
was the other
it is, even if they took everything, that still wouldn't qualify for 10-year 100%. It'd be the 85%. So I think it was trying to give some sort of calculatable return on investment to justify the incentive. I think that was kind of what we were working on, and Beth can obviously talk to that a little bit more, but I would think it was trying to reward the effort, the work, and the investment in a fair and equitable manner, so that maybe you could incentivize a company if they saw this, that they thought, maybe they were thinking they were going to bring in 25 new jobs, but if they added just another one, they could get another 10%. Maybe they might think of expanding a little bit bigger because of that incentive. And I think it was just to help drive larger growth, so it wasn't completely flat across the board, that we rewarded the bigger investments.
Well, to me, it makes sense that we're at we don't want to be too low, we don't want to be too high with other communities our size or with industrial parks that we're competing with. And so if this kind of splits each end, so to speak, that makes sense to me to have these percentages.
So I'm going to ask this question, and if it's there and it's just staring me in the face and I don't see it because I was reading it through here, what is the time frame? Is that in here and I've just missed it? Like how many years?
10 years is the max.
10 years is the max. Okay, because I didn't see that, but it's probably just.
It'd be
and-
the same percentage through the 10 years, not tiered.
Yeah, and we
So
talked
further
about that
back
one,
under
yeah.
tax abatement, it says for 5 years, and then an additional 5 years. Is what I thought it said. Anyone?
Yes, should be a limit to a term of 5 years.
Yeah.
Initial term of 5 years
Okay.
plus an additional 5 years subject to review and approval at the end of the initial term. So is that what we're talking about with regard to, like, say, an industry?
Correct.
Okay.
So, and that review would just be a kind of a checking the pulse on the project and seeing if it was still holding up to the expectations. And it's a more formalized review. Again, in your current policy, that's something that's asked for, but it hasn't been affected in that same sort of formalized manner. So this is just a different way to bring back the project, to see its effects, and to more formally renew it for that final 5 years.
So under item 3 for annual reporting, we need to maybe formalize that up a little more and have staff report to the commission body a status of those reports after they've been collected.
We can certainly do that.
Sorry, I'm just seeing this too, and I don't know anywhere that does like 5 years and 5 years, so, I mean, that's just creating more work to the Board of Tax Appeals, and then when you run the project, you would have to, like, I would have to rerun it through CD Bar again for that second 5-year tax abatement. I just don't know of anybody that does it that way.
Okay.
Well, what if it was done for 10, but that second 5 year was part of the clawback?
Well, I think
Yeah,
it'd be
that's-
10 and it'd be subject to an annual review.
Right,
So I think you'd be
that's-
all right.
That's how, yeah, and then the whole thing's subject for clawback from
Right.
Right.
year one, yeah, is how I would prefer.
I just, it's like, oh, well, if you can get it, then we'll put a clawback. And, oh, well, we may ask for pilots and everything. I just need them to, like, actually be incorporated into these agreements instead of
Yeah.
not.
So you said annual review, Chris? Is that what?
Right.
Yeah. I think it's just easy, the Board of Tax Appeals thing isn't a fun and it just be easier.
The annual reporting is a condition of the incentive. That's a paragraph, and I don't have a page, but it's in there.
All right. But I think that,
It probably helps more to have the paper than I did there. Okay.
so
Thank
potentially, Mayor Senate, maybe if we put under annual reporting, you said just a little clause there that said annual reports on projects should come before the city commission.
Right, so they should be, staff should compile them and present them to the commission.
And I think we've talked about it with the staff, that's something that we do in other communities, and so you get notification, and then we'll go out and find out where they're at, and then report that back to you guys.
I need to have that because I have to certify to the county every year, and I'm doing that right now with all the ones that we have. saying that they are meeting their stuff and they still are allowed to have their tax exemption and that kind of thing. So we need to figure out a timing on that because that happens all the time in February. So,
So, yeah, the other communities, they just send those to us, and we reach out to the companies, so just, yeah, well, we can coordinate that.
yeah.
Any additional language on that, those concerns or that item on reporting or length of time?
I'm good with.
Let me go through all my little flags.
I don't know if you want to add it, but it is something that the other communities that I work with, they'll have the company come too. So when we come to report, then the company would come and kind of let you know what's going on with the business as well. So it kind of gives them a little bit of responsibility in the process too.
Skin in the game.
Yeah. And that doesn't have to be formal, that's just something we can.
Were there other items of questions?
I think that answers it for me.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think I've got mine.
Kathy, were you okay on the percentages? Did you want to talk about the
Yeah.
percentages more?
Yeah, I mean, if, you know, if you arrived at those because based on other areas around and we're not high, we're not low, we're just, I don't want to touch something that is probably not a good idea. I just,
Something we talked about last time with the percentages, and I don't think we talked about it anymore, was it takes away the tiered ability. So it's kind of everything at, 85%, where sometimes in the past we have done, 100% for the first 5 years and then 25%. We had that ability, so that's just something that this doesn't address, is that we could change it to a tiered, which helps you regain money quicker, but I don't know how to put that in here. But it's definitely something we use.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything is open for discussion if you wanted to move from that. I think it was just trying to figure out what would be, what meets the commission's goals and is the most developer friendly. I think that was the kind of where we were trying to find a happy medium of, I think we'd heard a lot of comments that knowing what to expect up front and being able to calculate it, especially when you're comparing two communities, I think kind of helped set us in this direction. But of course, if you want us to look at something else, we always can, so.
Well, I think that hits on something that's really important, is this is the policy, but this is not necessarily how we market our EDC policy to developers or to people that would be considering it. And maybe that's a different repackaging of this policy that walks them through, hey, here's how you can be a developer in Newton, and
Right, yeah, this isn't.
less black and white word with citations and more.
This is not the sales guide.
Right. So I think the sales one is just as important, but they're going to come to our website, and I do not envy Aaron of having to redo our website. Because that's where they're going to come. They're going to come to our website. They're going to come to Choose Newton to see if they want to do business here and everything, and we need to get it right.
She's got a cone head with her now that it's going to help, so.
I can't believe she broke you on day one.
I
Was
can't
it
believe you
A2?
put the picture in the public eye.
well, Beth, do you have some kind of a take on how developers are with this? Since you've arrived at what has been working, how do they respond to that?
No, I think it's great. If you look at communities that have similar things, it's very helpful for developers. It's helpful for the companies that are looking to expand. I think it's helpful for you guys too, as you know, we say a lot, oh, you're picking winners or losers. Why did one company get this? And that really does help you say, well, this is our policy. And so I think it's a win for everyone involved.
It gets us to round one.
Okay, thank you.
Not a legal issue, but a policy issue. I think we discussed it last time if you're talking about tweaks, but I think one thing to look at is it is heavily weighted to location. Someone's getting a 30% bump on location, whereas that percentage could be gone to either capital investment or job creation if that's of more importance to the commission. Just a thought. I mean, you get a bump from, if you go from 5 jobs to 26 jobs, I don't know, or you go from 5 to 50, you get a 20% bump, but just being inside the boundaries of a certain area, you get a 30% bump. So you could consider putting those percentages either on jobs or capital investment.
I appreciate you mentioning that because I've been sitting here trying to figure out a question I wrote to myself. And I thought, why did I write that? And that was exactly it. How to determine when you're considering one of the most important criteria. And I did, when I looked at that, as far as location is concerned, that is a big chunk.
And it is important to some degree. It's the will of, obviously, the commission of what is important: jobs, capital investment, or location, or what combination.
And I think that, the thought is the infrastructure and the cost has been put into that area, and so you want to reward that. But then we mentioned it last time, if you look at like Millennium Machine and Tool, who they've continued to expand where they're at, which isn't going to be one of these locations, and so then it automatically cuts them out. And so you can see the benefit of adding, we want growth there to kind of offset the cost that we put in, but there are places like Full Vision and that are doing things that they wouldn't get the same benefit.
Well,
Well,
so, because Millennium is inside the
Are they?
neighborhood revitalization program area.
Then
So
Full
maybe
Vision.
maybe those don't need to be a blanket 30%, and maybe they need to be different on where we want to direct development.
I thought it was like industrial.
You could put up to 30%.
You can make it up to and look at it annually as far as how you want to push development, where you want, where in town you want to push them. If we want to make a concerted effort towards, South Meridian, then maybe that becomes a location with a different higher percentage.
Makes sense to me to do a case-by-case basis like that and do the up to 30%.
So instead of a blanket on location of 30% and up to,
Just change it to up to 30% additional.
I'm glad you deciphered your notes.
well, when he was saying that, I'm like, that's exactly what I
I
meant.
had question mark on mine, and I was like, why did I put a question mark?
Yeah, but I did too, and it was just enough to actually get me off track. And so thank you, Chris.
So was for the clarifying on that language, is it just the words up to 30% and leave it open for every case then? Is that what?
Yeah.
Okay. I had one thing I did want to bring up, if there's no other pressing questions right at this moment, not that we can't come back to them, but I just wanted to bring your attention to the proclamation policy one more time because that had been edited, and I apologize, it still has a misuse of the word council instead of commission. So, but as a reminder, this was Denise and I working, she looked at a lot of other communities' policies and how they came to determine how to handle proclamations. And so this was a verbiage that she offered up as hopefully a little bit clarifying with a little bit more direction. One of it was to clarify the purpose and really state that the proclamation is not legally binding and is only honorary. And then the few small deletes were made. And then the other one where I still used the incorrect language, but it's that it's issued, just because it's issued doesn't mean it's the support of the project. It's just issued as an honorary. So I just wanted to bring your attention to that.
I had another note on that one.
Yes.
Section C, under policy, item number 2, second to last sentence, it says, commission that promote commercial business activities. So proclamations will not be considered by the commission that promote commercial. I think it should maybe be, I mean, because we have our chamber is here always asking for a proclamation, and I don't want to exclude them from doing that. So, but they do it generally. They don't do it specifically. So I had just said, well, maybe it needs to be that promote a specific commercial business activity or something.
Okay. That's a good clarification. I think that follows the intent. I think it was just not to make one to promote a certain brand or.
Right. So, I don't know. I just.
Which one were you looking
Items 2, where it says proclamations will not be considered that promote commercial business. We want to promote overall.
1-3.
Maybe just not a specific one, but have a proclamation for that specific business.
1-2.
I think it's one of the few pages we still have. Okay. Is there anything else that you can remember? No? Okay. Oh, yes, sorry.
Fees and waivers?
Fees and waivers was deleted because, well, not deleted, it's included into that larger economic development policy. And the language in that, we can look at that really quickly. And then I forgot, Denise reminded me that we had another piece to go over. It is right before the RHID policy, and at the end of those spec buildings, it's that small paragraph, and it now is just a couple of sentences that in order to encourage reinvestment and redevelopment, the city may eliminate or reduce various fees by request. Waived or reduced fees may be requested for the, should say, for projects meeting local development objectives in writing to the city commission. There was
Okay.
another edit in there that did not come off.
All right, that's
I think I will be very happy to present this in a clean version without the red line.
well, Rich likes the red line now. So.
So I will definitely make sure that we delete that duplicative text there. The other thing, there's in the ethics policy, which is the last piece, Denise and I reviewed it and just kind of wanted to review some of these pieces of the policy. One is the application, and it's highlighted. This is just as a reminder that this policy, the way it is stated, applies to not just the commissioners, but to any position, board, or commission that you're appointed or perform services. So this has a really, really broad scope. So to just keep that in mind. And the other thing that we noted in here was the interpretation and guidelines. A couple pages later, it says to keep any unsolicited gift or gratuity having a value exceeding $100. I think in 1996, $100 was a differing amount than it is today.
That's a carton of eggs.
So I didn't know if we were just curious if that was something that you wanted to revisit, because something valuing $100 would be maybe a lesser kind of type of gift these days, just due to inflationary prices. So those were just the two items there, just to take note of.
Was that 100? So that 100 is an original number?
Yes.
That's not an updated number?
No, we did not update it. These were just items of note that we noticed in it when we were reading through them, and just thought we should bring up in case the commissioners wanted to offer any feedback or suggestions, since we were reviewing all the policies.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, the HR manual for city staff is either the same or lower.
It's cheaper to buy a city staff.
Wow.
Who knows?
The only suggestion I would say is ask the League of Municipal Governments what if they have a number, and then I'd be fine with going with it.
Yeah,
I have no need to set that number myself.
I wouldn't need,
I don't think any of us probably ever got a gift that was
No.
worth more than $100.
I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
You've got some coverage in D as well that, I mean, that would include any sort of gift or gratuity under the circumstances, but we can talk to the league about what's, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember ever receiving anything other than a little trinket or something that might be worth $10 or $15. It just hasn't happened.
We got the puffer jacket or whatever.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah.
One could argue that that jacket didn't have that value because it's logoed with that company's name.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that would-
yeah.
you know, but I would ask
I
the
didn't
league.
even think about that.
So just for a little bit of clarification, if you're good with all these changes, do you want us to go ahead and put this into the final form? Do you want to review it before you adopt it, like at a commission meeting, that we would give you the review of it? And then at the following meeting, you would adopt it? Or are you good to go with adopting? I mean, what's your,
I'm good to go.
I like giving it to us at one meeting and then
I
2
do
weeks
too.
later us adopting it.
Seeing it in the final.
okay,
form
that's
for
fine. We can
review.
do that. That's not a problem. So we could have that for your review at the March 11th. You think we can, and then you would adopt it at the 25th?
Okay.
If you're good with that. Just for clarification. Thank you.
All right.
Might get rid of the references to employees because it's applied to electeds, because you covered it in personnel manual.
Perfect.
Okay. If there isn't anything else, then we'll adjourn the work session.